bit of time with God, a little bit more of the king's men, the king's brave hero type men. And if you have your Bible nearby, we're going to be still in Genesis, and we're going to go to the next guy down the list that struck Bill's heart on the way through, which is Mr. Abram, or Abraham, as we see his name change in the midst of our story today. Heroes. And I thought about that as I rolled down my window just heading into the COVID last tent there. And there were a couple of ladies out there with, it was raining out, so they're covering everything with plastic, and they're covered with plastic, and they got their mask on, and you can barely tell that they're human beings. And as I rolled down my window, I said, thank you, because it struck me that they were heroes. They were heroes. They're out there on the front line doing their thing. And I said, thank you. Thank you. And they nodded in appreciation and went on their way doing their business at about 12 feet away from all the cars. They were really, really keeping that 6-foot distance for sure. Heroes are needed in our land. And God has found some interesting critters to be heroes in his faith. And this one, Abram, is the one we'll look at today. So we're going to begin in chapter 12 of Genesis. And we're going to hear the call of Abram. Verse 1 of chapter 12 says, the Lord said to Abram, go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all the peoples on earth will be blessed through you. So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he set out for Haran. So Abram went as the Lord told him. This is the challenge, of course, of our walk with God, is that God asks us to do something, and we have to decide what to do about that. God says to Abram, I'd like to make you famous. I'd like to make you amazing. I'd like to make you a blessing to the people, and I want to bless you, and I want to bless those you bless, but I need you to move. Would you move for me? Would you go? And as we look there, so Abram went as the Lord had told him. He picked up and packed up all of his gear, and even the guy next door, and it took them all off. Okay, I'm going to follow the Lord. What a great testimony of faith. Just hearing what God says and saying yes. Hearing what God says and saying yes. Now these truths that we will learn as we go through Abram's life are so valid to our lives today. Each one of us here has probably got something in our hearts and in our minds as I talk about just hearing what God says to us, because there's something in there that God's trying to move us toward, or move us away from, or get us to change. And he says, I need you to do this for me. And we have to decide, what am I going to do with that? Abram says, sure, packed his bags, went on his way, unflinching obedience. I love it. But let's go over, we're just going to go down to verse 10 of that same chapter. We're just a few verses down the road. There was a famine in the land, and Abram went down to Egypt to live there for a while because the famine was severe. As he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife Sarai, I know what a beautiful woman you are. And Sarai says, thank you very much. He says, when the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife. Then they will kill me, but will let you live. Say you are my sister, so I will be treated well for your sake, and my life will be spared because of you. Yeah, I don't know if you remember the promise we just read. We'll go back a little bit, back to verse 2. I will make you into a great nation. And so as he heads down into Egypt, he says, oh, I might get killed down here because of you, my beautiful wife. So therefore, why don't you lie and we'll figure out a way because, obviously God's lost control here. I mean, I could die and then that promise wouldn't come true. We better figure it out. I know. I have an idea. You pretend you're my sister and we'll get through this and I will still live. It'll be a great thing. No problem, right? Well, yeah. So we know the rest of that story. It didn't go that well. We get into trouble one way and the other just because Abram decides he wants to take God's desire, God's will, God's promise into his own hands and say, I'll work it out. I'll do it my way. A failure, a mistake on the way through. Now, if I were God, that would be a problem, wouldn't it? If I were God, I'd probably said, yeah, Abram, you know what? I gave you a chance. I gave you a promise and I sent you out and you were doing okay, but now you're messing up. I think I'm going to have to find another guy. Maybe, I got a whole screen full of people here. Let me pick somebody else. Maybe I think I'll go with Kathy. Kathy's in my upper left-hand side. So Kathy is who I'm going to go because Abram is a mess up. I'm not going to deal with him. But no, God doesn't do that. He says, okay, Abram, you made a mistake. Let's move on. So we're going to go to chapter 15, over a couple more pages. This is going to be a whirlwind tour till we get to the end. Chapter 15, verse 1 says, after this, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision one more time. Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward. Now, what was the problem at the last stop? I'm afraid I'm going to get killed. And so God comes right around and he says, okay, you're fearful? Listen, don't be afraid. I'm your shield. I am your very great reward. Relax, Abram. It's going to be fine. And so he goes on, he says, but Abram said, Sovereign Lord, what can you give me since I remain childless? And the one who will inherit my estate is Eliezer of Damascus. Once again, I just love this guy because he doesn't always connect the dots well. So Abram is scared. He sends his wife off to pretend she's his sister. We get through that mess. God comes back. He says, don't be afraid. And Abram's first response is, hey, you know what? I don't have that kid you promised. I'm supposed to have a lot of kids, and I don't have a kid. So, this guy from Damascus is going to inherit my stuff. God, where are you in this promise fulfillment? And God continues. Abram said, you have given me no children, so a servant in my household will be my heir. Then the word of the Lord came to him, this man will not be your heir, but a son who is your own flesh and blood will be your heir. He took him outside and said, look up at the sky. Great verse here. Look up at the sky and count the stars, if indeed you can count them. Then he said to him, so shall your offspring be. Verse 6, Abraham believed the Lord, and he credited it to him as righteousness. Abram said, okay, I believe. And God said, nice, good job. Your faith is there. Your confidence is there. You're getting it. This is good. And so we see Abram moving up. He's moving up the hill. He's on top. This is good. Abram's doing well. And, well, we continue the story. Chapter 16, just down a little bit there. Verse 1. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children, but she had an Egyptian slave named Hagar. So she said to Abram, the Lord has kept me from having children. Go sleep with my slave. Perhaps I can build a family through her. Great idea. God's having problems fulfilling his promise. So how about we fix it for him? You haven't ever done that before, have you? No. It's never been a part of your life experience where you think, well, God tells me to go this way, so I'm going to fix it, because God obviously has lost control. God obviously forgot about me. I'm supposed to have children. There was the promises to have children. You're going to have a lot of children. I can't have children. So Sarai comes up with a great idea. How about you take my servant and maybe you can have children through her, and that will work out. Once again, Abram down back. I'm going to go to the number 2. What was that? Second person in my screen here is Dave. Okay, Abram's done. Dave, I'm going to you. Okay. All right. You're going to take care of it now. I'm done with Abram. He's a terrible mess. I can't believe it. So verse 17, chapter 17 is where we're going to go next, down to verse 15. God also said to Abram, oh, look at that. God shows up again. Abram, you're messing up. You almost get it. You look good, and then you fail. And you look good, and then you fail. But God shows up again. 17:15 says, God also said to Abraham, as for Sarai, your wife, you are no longer to call her Sarai. Her name will be Sarah. I will bless her and will surely give you a son by her. By who? By her. By her. Got that, Abraham? He changed his name, by the way, on the way through. I will bless her so that she will be the mother of nations. Kings of peoples will come from her. Abraham fell face down. I'm anticipating this is going to be good. He's going to worship. Going to fall face down and go, Lord, I'm sorry I missed it. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. I'm sorry that I didn't have the confidence in the faith. He fell face down. This is great. And he laughed. He laughed. He said, yeah, right. Okay, sure. Sometimes God's promises, are they too big for you? Sometimes they're like, I promise you this, I promise you that, I'm going to be with you. And sometimes we go, where are you, God? And we internally, we laugh. We say, God, I just can't believe it. There are parts of us that have to work that through and say, Lord, it can't be true. It can't be true. And Abraham here, he laughs. Will a son be born to a man 100 years old? Will Sarah bear a child at the age of 90? And Abraham said to God, if only Ishmael might live under your blessings. Once again, Abram comes to the rescue of God. God, you can't be serious. You make me laugh. I'm not going to have a child. Sarah's not going to have a child. How about if you bless some other prodigy of mine? How about if you work it out that way? And God said, no, I'm going to use Sarah to be born for you. So once again, here in the midst of great blessing and great promises, Abraham loses touch with the reality and misses it. So chapter 18, down to verse 10. Then one of them, these are angels that have visited, then one of them said, I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son. Now Sarah was listening at the entrance to the tent, which was behind him. Abraham and Sarah were already very old, and Sarah was past the age of childbearing. So Sarah laughed to herself, and she thought, after I am worn out and my Lord is old, will I now have this pleasure? Then the Lord said to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh and say, will I really have a child now that I am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? Now to hold that one for a little bit. Is anything too hard for the Lord? Did Sarah think anything was too hard for the Lord? Yeah. Did Abraham think something was too hard for the Lord? Yeah. Do we occasionally think, Lord, I don't know how you're going to work this out? Yeah, sometimes we do. But Sarah moves on here. Is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son. Sarah was afraid. So she lied and said, I did not laugh. Now, these are angels that are visiting, by the way. And maybe even the incarnate Jesus Christ, the pre-incarnate Jesus Christ. We didn't even know who these things are, but they're heavenly beings. And so she decides she's going to cover up her laughter inside the tent. I didn't laugh. I didn't laugh. You didn't see me laugh. Who was laughing? It wasn't me laughing. But he said, yes, you did laugh. He knew it. He understood it. He, the angel, he, the Lord of creation, understood. You've made another mistake, Sarah. You made another mistake, Abraham, again and again. And God says, I'm done with you. I'm going to pick the third face up there. Oh, it's Jan Johnson. Jan, you're going to take over. Abraham's done. Jan Johnson's on. All right? We're going to use her. We go on and we see another mistake there as we go through the Sodom and Gomorrah mess. But we're going to go over to chapter 20. Chapter 20, Abraham again is making mistakes. Abraham moved on, verse 1 of chapter 20. Abraham moved on from there into the region of the Negev and lived between Kadesh and Shur. For a while he stayed at Gerar, and there Abraham said of his wife Sarah, "She is my sister." Then Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent for Sarah and took her. She is my sister. Now, I realize at this point that Sarah is a 90-year-old lady, so she must have been one fine lady. 90 years old, and the kings are trying to steal her from Abraham. This is great. This is awesome. But Abraham falls into the same trap again. Again. Now, as we walk through this story, this series of stories, it's got to be poignantly obvious that God continues to work with us no matter how many times we mess up. That God desires to continue to bless us and stay close to us no matter how difficult our journey has been, how many times we've been there to a place where we could have been faithful and we failed to be faithful. Abraham is an example of this. I mean, the whole generation at Jesus' day looked back and said, I'm a child of Abraham. I'm one of his. This is my calling card. I'm one of Abraham's kids. It was a testimony of how great Abraham was. But we see as we walk through his life, he was just a regular guy who made a lot of mistakes, made a lot of bad mistakes. We're going to go down to chapter 21. Now the Lord was gracious to Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah what he had promised. Sarah became pregnant and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the very time God had promised him. Abraham gave him the name Isaac, but the son Sarah bore him. So we see the fulfillment of promise. God comes through in spite of the age of Abraham, in spite of the infertility of Sarah, and in spite of Sarah's laughing, in spite of Abraham's laughter, in spite of all that went on the way through, that they were past the age of even bearing children, in spite of their doubt, in spite of their laughter, they're giggling to themselves, this can't be true. Isaac shows up. The blessing comes. The promise is fulfilled. God does exactly what he promised to do. Chapter 22. Some time later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, Abraham, here I am, he replied. Then God said, take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you. Wow. After all that they've been through, this has been years, this has been decades of promise and fulfillment, of the final arrival of Isaac, of the precious son, the one who would be the fulfillment of God's prophecy, the one who would bring life to nations, it would be bringing kings into the world. It would be a blessing on all people. God says, I want you to take your son, and I want you to sacrifice him. God says, take your son, your only son, just to emphasize, Abraham, this is the one, right? You've only got one? Yeah, this is the one. I want you to take that one. Take your son, your only son, the son whom you love, the one that's close to your heart. I want you to take that one, and I want you to sacrifice him. I suppose that God occasionally calls us to give up the thing we love the most. Occasionally, God asks us for something that's just amazingly beyond what we believe is our ability to do. God, I can't do that. I can't possibly do that. This is the son of promise. This is the one, the only one I have. This is my my beloved son, the one who is close to my heart, and now you're asking me to give him up? I don't think I can. Verse 3. Early the next morning, Abraham got up and loaded his donkey. That was a great line. Early the next morning, Abraham gets up, loads his donkey. I'm on my way. You know, we've been through a lot with Abraham through these few chapters here. And this confidence, this belief, this trust has been established deep in his heart. And when God asks the impossible of him, he just loads up his donkey. Okay, let's go. We're going to the mountain. Come on, son. We got a job to do. And it's beautiful. It's amazing. The heart, the pathos, the angst and everything seems to have been melted into the confidence that my God will take care of me. I finally learned the lesson. That's good for us old folks, right? A few of us old folks finally learned the lesson. Isn't it good to know that there's still hope for us? I've been out here for 75, 85, 95 years. Oh, mom's not quite 95 yet, I know. And I finally learned the lesson. I got it. Abraham goes out, loaded his donkey. He took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place God had told him about. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. He said to his servants, "Stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you." Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son, Isaac, and he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the 2 of them went along together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father Abraham, "Father?" "Yes, my son," Abraham replied. "The fire and the wood are here," Isaac said, "but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham answered, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And the 2 of them went on together. I can't imagine that journey. I can't imagine. Abraham is walking along with his son to his side and a couple of servants, and they're carrying all the equipment that's necessary to do a sacrifice on the mountain. And Abraham knows full well that what God is asking him to do is sacrifice his boy. He's walking along, and he's got to be feeling it. He's got to be, God, what's going on here? I trust you. I do trust you. And maybe he needed 3 days in order to work it through. I do trust you. I do trust you. I do trust you. Even though this is hard, even though this is impossibly hard, I've seen you again and again do the impossible. To show up when it couldn't happen, to provide when it couldn't be provided, to make all this come true. So I trust you here and now. When they reached the place God had told him about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham!" "Here I am," he replied. "Do not lay a hand on the boy," he said. "Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." What a story at the end of Abraham's days. He walked through so many disasters, so many difficulties, and he was trained by the toughness of the life that he walked through. And he was even trained by the mistakes to learn, okay, Lord, I should have trusted you back there. I failed. I'm better. I should have trusted you again. I failed, but I'm getting there. And when it came to that last test, the NIV captures that word and says, yeah, God was giving him a test. This is kind of like the final exam. You're coming to defend your thesis. This is it. Do you really trust me, Abraham? Maybe in those years between as Isaac was growing up, there was a reinforcement again and again. God did it. God did it. God did it. I'm okay. God took care of us. I can't believe it. It's a miracle, but there it is. The miracle's in front of me. I'm working with the little miracle right now. He needs a haircut. The miracle is right here in my face. It's reinforcing again and again and again that God is faithful. And when this challenge comes that's so amazingly difficult, Abraham was ready. And he said, yes, let's go to the mountain. Let's go. I need to take you up to the mountain. And as far as I can see, as far as Abraham knew, he was going to sacrifice his son. What was he thinking? What was he working through in those moments? Maybe it was, I know God is a miracle worker. If I kill my son on the altar, he could bring him back to life. If I kill my son on the altar, God could give me another child, even though I'm 100 and change. He could do it again. He did a miracle. I trust him so much that I will yield to him whatever he asks of me. So we bring it back home. Where's God in your world these days? What's he calling you to? What's he asking you to? Is there something that's so outrageous and so miraculously difficult or challenging that it just sits in your heart and your mind and you go, boy, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can. I encourage you to lean into God. Know that what he says is what he really wants of you, because there's a danger there that we develop our own idea of what God might want. And obviously, as Abraham was walking through the world, God spoke directly to him and said, this is what I want. But God has left us with a lot of directions, a lot of things that he wants us to do. He's left us with the challenge to really, truly love our neighbor, consider them important, to think about them, maybe far more highly than we do right now, to consider what we might be about as God calls us out into this world, to be an encouragement, to be a help, to be a support. It's not easy. It's not going to be easy. God didn't call us to easy. God didn't build us for easy. He built us to be the workers that he needs. He says, you are Christians. You are little Christs in a sense. You are Christians. You are going out into the world as the hands and feet of Jesus to change the world. Jesus walked through this world. It wasn't easy for him. Why would we expect it to be easy for us? So wherever God's calling you, be confident. Learn that God can use each one of us, no matter where we've been and what the struggle has been. God can use us to change this world just a little bit. May God lead us well. So go saddle up your donkey, will you? Let's get to it. Amen.